Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1061 just came out, and this was pretty much an amazing run of 3 straight One Piece chapters, really 4 straight One Piece chapters, because we can't forget about 1058 before the last break. So, I mean, what's there to say? I think that it was almost impossible to top the Im reveal. I mean, really the Uranus reveal, whatever you want to say, the island destroying ability of Im. I think that reveal from 1060, the Seraphims from 1059, those things are very, very difficult to top. But the one thing that basically compares, or at least competes with that, is definitely finally the reveal of Vegapunk, which I think was just a milestone in the story that we all knew was eventually coming, but we had no gauge as to when or what context in which it would actually finally happen. Vegapunk is just, I think for so long we've heard so much about this character, and we've just never had any sort of clear hint as to when or where they would be appearing. Right? How are they going to be inserting themselves in the story? Is it going to be through Smoker and Tashigi first? Is it going to be through the revolutionary armies meeting Vegapunk first? But no, it's actually just, this was one of the biggest things for me with the Straw Hats traveling to a new island, which was that we were getting the sense that it was not necessarily going to be Elbaf. I know there's some magazines and stuff that hinted that it's not going to be Elbaf. So for me, for the longest time, I was like, okay, what island could we possibly go to that's in between this versus Elbaf that would feel like worth it, considering we're in the final leg of the story, right? Do we really want another sort of breather island like Sphinx, like after with everything that's so crazy going on in the world? Do I really want to just sit through 15, 20 chapters of the Straw Hats on a breather island where there might not be much big conflict or major enemies or anything? This is the one island, Egg Island with Dr. Vegapunk. This is probably the only island that would actually be more exciting for us to visit right now than moving on to something like Elbaf. This is the only island where I think that I can think of off the top of my head where I'm like, yes, please let's have a breather here at this place for a little bit so that we can finally we can learn something about, first of all, much in the way that I feel like Zou was kind of a big, a space that we got a lot of big reveals for the general nature of the pirate world and kind of what's to come in terms of learning about the Will of D, getting to Laugh Tale, right? The 4 road poneglyphs and everything like that. We got the kind of, our understanding of the world and what was needed to get to the finish line was kind of blown open in Zou, and that was perfect for where we were at the story then, which was the Versus 4 Yonko saga, Luffy getting to the penultimate step to becoming Pirate King, right? Now with this is a little different in that at the point we're at the story now, what we really want answers to are questions about the other side of things, right? So not so much how do we get to One Piece, how do we get to Laugh Tale as much, but what's the deal with the world government, the Void Century with Kuma, what are the revolutionary armies, what have they been chasing after this entire time? This whole space in the story that's kind of been occupied ever since we started learning about Kuma, the experiments that he explained have been happening to him and everything like that way back in Thriller Bark. He started talking about Vegapunk, the character that, well, Kuma said the man, we know Vegapunk's well, it at least seems like Vegapunk's a girl at this point, but we'll get to that towards the end, right? So Kuma talking about Vegapunk, who's basically from the future, mind way far ahead of of the rest of the world, etc. What's going on with those experiments and everything like that? Then that's fitting into the Revolutionary Army, and Kuma secretly being a member of the Revolutionary Army. So okay, why is Kuma part of the Shichibukai, and why is he being experimented on by Vegapunk? Why is Bonnie after him, and why is Bonnie there in Marijoa at the same time as the Revolutionary Armies, right? How is all of this tied together? That whole space, that sort of, I guess, web of mysteries in the story that were kind of being interconnected for the longest time. We can finally get to the bottom of that. We can finally learn, probably through Bonnie, at least some of what happened in Marijoa. We can probably learn, at least through Bonnie and potentially through Vegapunk, what's the deal with Kuma? Why was this whole deal by the revolutionary armies or whatever happened there where Kuma ended up, a former leader of the revolutionary armies, ended up becoming a slave to the world government? What is the purpose behind all this? What is going on in that section of the story? And the more we learn about that, I think the closer we're going to get to learning about basically what we're really fighting against, right? What Im is up to, what the Gorosei are up to, what's the secret war that's been being waged by the revolutionaries versus the world government this entire time. I think these two characters, Bonnie and Vegapunk, are kind of the keys to us learning about that, short of actually running into the revolutionaries themselves. So I'm extremely excited for this next section of the story. I don't think we're going to get all of this exposition and explanations right away. Similar to Zou, most likely, though, we'll probably get a bit of a storyline here first that will culminate with us learning, hopefully, a good deal about the rest of the world. I don't want to get into stuff like, is Bonnie going to be the next crewmate, blah, 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 blah. It's maybe, I don't know, who knows. I will say this about Bonnie. I've always liked Bonnie's character. It's easy for her to stand out as the one girl supernova out of that entire Worst Generation group. And obviously with the mysteriousness attached to her with what Akainu was talking about towards the very end of Post Timeskip when he finally caught up to her. Now, the interesting thing about Bonnie that I like personality-wise and how she's kind of playing off the Straw Hats is that I think both times the introductory scene of Bonnie, this wasn't the first time that we saw her, but this was kind of the first scene that made her really stand out and we got an idea of her character, was with her and Zoro, which was marked by her being very, I guess, pissed off and shocked by the obliviousness that Zoro, as a member of the Straw Hat crew, had towards the way of the world and the fact that he had just run into a Celestial Dragon and very nearly killed that Celestial Dragon, right? So she was very upset at the Straw Hats' stupidity, obliviousness, naivety, whatever you want to say. And right here we have the exact same thing with this time Luffy's like, yeah, where are we at or whatever, and she's like, you guys don't know what the hell what are you guys doing? This is a world government island. How can you guys be so dumb? How can you be so completely unaware as to the things going on around you that are bigger than you? This is not only a world government island, this is kind of the world government island. This is where their prized, precious crown jewel, Dr. Vegapunk, is. You guys have any idea where you're at? I just like that that's kind of the dynamic. Her playing off of Zoro's stupidity, her playing off of Luffy's stupidity. It'll be fun to see going forward for a little bit. So, Bonnie stuff aside, I think we can talk a little bit about Koby. We'll get to Vegapunk in a second, right? Bonnie stuff aside, let's talk a little bit about the Koby base, I guess. I think we just met like Koby's squad, like the Koby friends, like Koby and friends. I think we just met his little group. Like I'm like, okay, we got Helmeppo, but we've also got Hibari. So he's actually working with a bit of a trio at this point, and we don't know how Dahl or this Rear Admiral Gruss, I don't know how to say his name, really play into this or anything like that, but it seems like these are Koby's friends, and I like that they're also in the same space. Like we've got Tashigi here and everything like that. I assume Smoker. So I don't know, the good guy Marines that we all really like, they're all kind of collected around here. I mean, we know that Smoker and Tashigi were going to help out Dr. Vegapunk and everything like that. So I don't know. This is slotting very, very nicely into things, and I like it makes the fact that Koby got captured by Blackbeard suddenly way, way, way more relevant because so many pieces you can kind of see just things coming together. I think we're gonna get to see a lot of interesting interactions, hopefully between a Straw Hat reunion with those Marines, maybe with Smoker, Tashigi, Helmeppo. Maybe that sends us in Koby's direction or something like that. But I don't know. It's just a lot of familiar faces, and I don't know, just the good guy side of the Marines. Obviously, they're all members of SWORD for the most part. Now it feels like everybody's a member of SWORD. Good stuff. It seems like SWORD. I think SWORD is basically shaping up, obviously, to be once the world government has been or the Celestial Dragons and stuff have been taken down. Right? It was established by the Revolutionary Army that that their goal is not to destroy the world government, it's to take down the Celestial Dragons and thereby reform the world government, right? So we know that there's still going to be Marines and everything at the end of the story, which is why pushing SWORD is more and more important at this stage in One Piece, because we have to understand that even though many Marines, enforce a very flawed notion of justice, there is this subgroup within the Marines that that are basically the good guy Marines that we can expect will be basically taking over once there's this huge reformation of the world government and everything like that. So I like that, getting us, a bit more of SWORD, some sneak peeks at SWORD and everything like that. Let me talk about Vegapunk for a second, which is, okay, so there's so much, we're gonna get to her actual identity and everything like that, and whether that is the real body in a second. But the interesting things about Vegapunk to me are, one, talking about the shark's not obeying, right? And she's like, no matter what I can do, it seems like I can't really cut out that primal desire, right? So that's an interesting point in that it goes probably a little bit to the idea of free will in One Piece, that no matter what, you can't actually snuff out free will. You can't create a fully obedient monster. Through the stream, I was getting more ideas, just talking to people and everything like that. There were references back to Hogback. It's interesting that Hogback, he even created, his perfect Victoria Sindri. But even she, even though like a pure creation of his to be exactly as he wanted her to be, even she still had free will, and she wouldn't follow exactly what he wanted to do. And people in my stream were talking about how that plays into the idea of the Seraphim, right? If she can't even make this shark do exactly what it's told, if she can't even make this shark follow 100% to the T its orders, she can't suppress its true inner primal desires or whatever, how can you say that the Seraphim are foolproof? How can you 100% snuff out that sense of individuality or drive for freedom that these pirates who are basically defined by their drive for freedom. How can you snuff that out of 7 of the strongest pirates in the world? So the Seraphim suddenly became a lot more sketchy, even though they're talking about it this chapter as though, like, why can't we send some Seraphims over to Blackbeard's territory and stuff? It's like, it's probably not going to be that easy. And that suddenly indicates to me that the Seraphim are going to be even more interesting than we expected down the line. So that aside, let's get into the voice of the people. These were comments submitted by the top tier of patrons, and I want to read out 2 of them because I think they're particularly interesting in terms of how they play off of each other, which is one is from Koopy Koop, who's saying, I think that Dr. Vegapunk we saw at the end of the chapter was a daughter, or more likely a clone or robot created by Vegapunk. Her jacket says Punk 2 on it, implying that there is a Punk 1. So Koopy Koop is of the opinion that this is not the real Vegapunk, and then on the other hand, you have Don John, who's saying the initial thought is that the woman we see in the chapter is a clone or daughter of Vegapunk, but I believe it's the real deal. She's making the world government think she's an old man, she's an old man, when in reality, the old man is a robot or a clone, and Vegapunk is really old, but Bonnie has helped her stay young with her fruit. So there's 2 conflicting ideas there. Both believe that Vegapunk is up to some degree up to clones or robots or something, and not showing his or her true face to some party. Either this is the real Vegapunk, and what she shows to the world government is some old man clone that she's made, or what the world government sees, which is some old dude, like Kuma seemed to imply back during Thriller Bark, is the real deal, and at Vegapunk's actual residence, Egg Island, he has some clones of himself wandering around to be the first to meet guests or intruders or whatever. Where do I stand on this? I do think the fact that we've gotten many at the moment, I'm of the opinion that, look, I'm just gonna assume that Vegapunk is this woman until we're shown otherwise, but I'm gonna be skeptical of it, if that makes sense. Like, I'm kind of just taking it for granted what I see, because I don't have a strong reason at the moment to think that, like, this is something else. But there's a few factors, such as 1, there was no title card that came up under Vegapunk that said, Vegapunk, the way that Oda often does. 2, Oda has called Vegapunk a man multiple times, and he did it through Kuma at Thriller Bark, and Kuma was the guy that was being experimented on. Again, if that version of Vegapunk was in fact a robot or clone and this is the real Vegapunk, then that's still possible that Kuma might be mistaken to think that Vegapunk is a man. But Oda's been kind of, I think, consistent with calling Vegapunk a man. I just don't know. I think that's not a fun answer, but that's basically where I'm at, which is, I think right now, I think there's a solid possibility that this is one of Vegapunk's experiments. But at the same time, this could just be, the actual real deal Vegapunk, and we kind of get used to Vegapunk's actual design and persona and personality and everything being somewhat different than we initially thought. And, that's perfectly fine. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later.